Okay, good evening, everyone. It's really nice to see everyone here tonight. I want to say good evening to the friends of the law school, to my colleagues, to our students, obviously to the guest, and we'll get to him a little bit later more. My name is Professor Engela Schlemmer. I am the head of the school, and it is really my great pleasure to welcome you all here tonight. The Fireside chat tonight kicks off our centenary celebrations, and it is the start of a plan that we are developing to host more of these events regularly in the school. We will be sharing more details of all our plans with you in the next coming weeks. But in the meantime, please diarise the weekend of 2 to 4 September, which is Wits's homecoming weekend. That is when we will have a weekend-long festival that celebrates the 100 years of the university. So we're really looking forward to that. But before we start tonight's event, I would like to thank a couple of people and acknowledge them who worked so hard behind the scenes to make all of this happen. Firstly, Nomazulu Ndimandi, Asma Uni, and Tuluwana Poshori. They've put in long hours to make all of this happen, and a big thank you to all of them for the hard work. I also want to extend a word of thanks to the students that have ushered you in and that have assisted us in the foyer. Given that this is the start of our centenary celebrations and our outreach campaign, it is fitting that we have a very high-profile guest here tonight. Otsile Matlou is a law school graduate of whom we are very proud. He got his LLB in 2000. His HDip tax, that's what they called it back then. HDip tax in 2003 and his postgraduate certificate in Advanced Company Law 1 and 2 in 2011. During his time at Wits, he was on the SRC and active in student politics. Otsile is a former advocate of the High Court of South Africa, who then moved into private practice at a law firm, and he is now the Chief Operating Officer for ENSAfrica. He's an experienced mining lawyer who advises in all aspects of mining law, from exploration, mining and beneficiation to downscaling and closure. His experience ranges from startup exploration projects to well-established mining projects. He acts for a wide range of mining companies in all mineral commodity sectors, including the base and precious metals, coal, rare earth, sand, and diamond sectors. So it gives me really a great pleasure to welcome him here. Our format for this evening's Fireside chat is very relaxed. As you can see, we're all sitting down instead of standing up. I will ask Otsile a number of questions, and then I'm going to open up to the floor and also to our online guests to put questions to him. We plan to be finished by around about 7:30, but you are all invited to join us afterwards for some snacks and photographs in the foyer. Those of you who are on social media, not the old people like me, please use the hashtag Wits Law Fireside Chat and tag Wits School of Law and tag us and tweet about us. We would like to be out there. With that, let me open this event, welcoming you once again, everyone in the room, and I'm really pleased to see so many of you here, as well as all our online guests, and especially our first guest to the Law School Fireside Chat, Otsile Matlou. Otsile, it's been quite some time since you've been a student here at Wits. How did you land up at Wits? Why did you choose to study law?
Thank you very much, and good evening to everyone. How did I end up at Wits? I took a train from Soweto to Wits. So that's what happened. But in all seriousness, I finished my matric just as the apartheid era was ending, and I was determined to go to university. So I applied to 3 universities, Wits and 2 others. I was fortunate to be accepted by all three. And the two universities required me to travel quite some distance away from home. And my mom didn't have money for that, so I came to Wits. That's the truth about why I ended up at Wits. The other reason, certainly when I was a law student, if you didn't do your law degree at Wits and you did it elsewhere, well, you may be forgiven for ending up at an okay law firm. But if you really wanted to be in the top of your game, you needed to be at Wits. So that's why I ended up at Wits.
And so obviously you had your vision set for where you wanted to be. But before we get to what you did later in your life, can you tell us about your student activism days here at Wits?
Yo, that's a long time ago. So I arrived to register as an arts student. So I did my arts degree at Wits as well before I did my LLB. And before I went to the arts faculty to register, I looked for a SAST desk. And I went to register as a member of SAST and was told you can't. You must first register as a student of the university. And so I was a member of SAST from day one. And those were interesting days. That's the transition from TEFSA to NSFAS. We did a long paper on why we needed to transition away from TEFSA and its faults to NSFAS, and we sent a delegation of student leaders to go and meet the Minister of Education. On this campus we did many, many things, some of which I'm very proud of, some of which, let's just say, I would rather they are not repeated.
And the challenges that today's students face, how do you see that?
So I suppose I was a student when we were trying to figure out whether to have constitutional liberties in South Africa or not. And so when I started as a student, we had funny things called constitutional principles. We didn't have a Bill of Rights that we have today. And so I don't think we had too many liberties back then. I think students today have a lot of rights, but I also think they have many more challenges than we had. For starters, the flow of information was quite manageable when I was a student. It was a lot harder to research, but it was also a lot easier to manage the volume of information. I think today there's just too much information flowing. So to sift through all of it and to get to where you need to get to and to use what you need is quite a challenge today. The other thing is, when I was a student, we didn't have the English word stress. It did not exist. We were just working hard, but no one ever said they're stressed. My younger brother was in the student movement here at Wits during the Fees Must Fall campaign, and he often came home to tell me that he's stressed. When I was a student here, I never had stress. So I think the challenges that law students face today are multifold. Firstly, they have many more liberties and they have much more of a personality than we had. We were just a compliant bunch when things were okay, and we were an extremely unruly bunch when we thought things were not okay. But I think today people have an ability to stand for something and have independence in what they do. With that comes challenges and responsibilities. University education is increasingly becoming expensive. University accommodation is becoming increasingly challenging. The university has grown. I mean, the intake of law students today doesn't compare to when I was a student. So I think there's a whole host of challenges. But I think to conclude, we had very few choices. If you wanted to study law, you studied law and you ended up in practice, or you ended up in-house. I know many law students today who want to own startup tech companies. And so there's a whole host of choices, and with choice comes the difficulty of a young mind having to exercise maturity beyond your years to determine what you need. And also things change too quickly. So I'm glad I was a law student when I was and not today.
I think a couple of very true words have been spoken now. Tell us a little bit about the name Willie.
That's cute. So let me first say my full names, and then I'll explain all of them. So my full names are Modisa Otsile William Matlou. So Otsile is half of my first name. And the reason I call myself Otsile is most people, if I say Modisa Otsile, they can't remember what I've just said. So Otsile is much more manageable. My middle name is William. And I grew up at a funny time in South Africa where people had so-called Christian names. And so I went to school to start primary school, and the teachers were not interested in Modisa Otsile. Just not interested. I said, you are William. So I was registered as William. And so when I meet people and they call me Otsile, I can categorize them in my life, where they come from and where they belong. Where they say William, I also can categorize them in my life. And word of advice to all of you, want to be in my good books, just stick with Otsile.
It's something that all of us should learn, which name defines us, isn't it so?
Absolutely.
Yeah, indeed. But tell me, what does the COO of the biggest law firm in the continent do for fun?
So I must start by saying I saw in the ads about tonight that ENS was called the biggest law firm. I don't like those words. I prefer largest law firm. There's a slight nuance, but it's quite an important one. I'm privileged to serve as one of 3 people who really run our firm. Very busy. We've got a partnership of over 200 partners, and each of them think that they're the most amazing person, and they are. They're very competent people, very difficult bunch to manage, but I love it. One of them is sitting here, the head of our Natural Resource and Environment Practice Group is sitting here, also a Wits graduate. They're a very difficult bunch, and they ask her to come here to listen to what I'm saying, so she can go and report back. But what we do at ENS, we try and practice law on the African continent. We are not a South African law firm. We used to be, but we're not a South African law firm. We're an African law firm with a presence in South Africa. And it's important to say that because our view is the legal market on the continent is so massive and is divided into 3 segments. One that is serviced predominantly by European and American firms, typically large capital infrastructure projects. Then the middle tier, which is national, regional, and even international investments and financing and M&A, that is serviced by large South African firms and an array of international law firms, and then local work that is serviced by in-country lawyers. We decided many years ago at ENS that we wanted to be a law firm that practices on the continent. So we've got offices in the 3 regions of sub-Saharan Africa, and our practice is continental. One of the things I do personally is I have to manage all of those offices outside of South Africa. So I travel quite a lot, so I go through a Megzi passport very quickly. I didn't go through it quickly during the last 2 years, thank God, but before that, quite regularly. So that's what I do during the day. I try and serve the partners and run the firm on their behalf. I have to put those words in, on their behalf. And in the evenings, I moonlight as a mining lawyer, and on weekends, I moonlight as an oil and gas lawyer. So that's what I do. So I do 3 things. I serve the partners, They think I run the firm, I serve them. I practice mining law and I practice oil and gas law.
No time for fun?
Oh, lots of fun. Fast cars.
On the highways?
No. I drive fast cars on the highways. I just don't drive them fast.
Ah. Okay, so that's it. How do you keep your mind from stressing?
I wake up on New Year's Day every year at my house, and I run home to Soweto, which is about 42 kilometers, to go and have breakfast with them. And then my dad asks me, "Have you run out of petrol money?" I said, "No." So I try and run a little bit. I cycle a lot. Road cycling, I'm not good with mountain biking. That's what I do.
Okay. It seems like you're a properly balanced person then, which is more than I think many of us can say. Do we have any questions from the online platform at this point, Kim? Not at this point. From the audience, is there any questions that you would like to ask? I still have quite a few, but if there are specific things that you would like to ask at this point, or you may think a little bit more whether there are certain things that you would like to ask, then I'm going to continue. I do see two hands. Here to my right-hand side, sir, and then you come second.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good evening, actually. So my name is Tibajo. I'm currently studying a Master of Finance and Investment at the Wits Business School. I also hold a LLB from this school. So my focus of my master is basically the funding of coal mines. So you stated in your introduction that you're a mining practitioner, you practice mining law. So my question to you is, given what I'm researching about, as I stated that I'm researching about the funding of coal. So now there is a global shift from renewable energy to, from coal to renewable energy. So my question is, given that that is actually going to be prejudicial and not going to look good for emerging economies, my question is, what is your view on that? For example, as South Africa depends too much on coal, what is your view on that we should move away from coal to renewable energy? Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. I'm a little worried that you are studying the financing of coal projects. I'm hoping you are finding material that relates to that, but because in my view, it's very difficult to fund, certainly through third-party financial services funders. It's very difficult to fund coal projects. But the gist of your question talks about just transition. Really, that's what the question is about, is how do we transition sustainably from a carbon-based economy to a cleaner, more sustainable economy. That's fundamentally what your question is about. And my view is that our people need power. We are desperate for it. At least in the last couple of days, it looks like it's been steady. So we need power, and in South Africa currently, our energy mix is carbon biased, and it's old, and it's something that we need to move away from over time. I don't think moving to renewables prejudices emerging economies at all. We have at least 270 days of free sun in South Africa every year. We should be utilizing that. But you can't do something of that nature just philosophically. You've got to transition. We've got many old coal-fired power stations that are our base load. And so you've got to transition smoothly. But I think we need to transition as a society. The only thing that worries me about this transition, this just transition, is a move away from V8 engine to electric cars. I can't deal with it. That's the only thing that worries me. But from a resource point of view, I do think it makes far more sense. I mean, the Northern Cape is sparsely populated and it's hot. It should have a plethora of solar farms there that are generating capacity for the country. And hopefully we'll get there at some point.
I hope we have another microphone for the gentleman up there.
I wish I had a very difficult question for you, Tate Matlou, but I just wanted to know, what is the difference between big and large, or biggest and largest? If you could just enlighten me a bit. Thank you.
Mr. Matlou. So Mr. Matlou is an old colleague of mine. And he promised me last week, I bumped into him at Home Affairs. And he promised to come here and ask me a difficult question. The good news, Mr. Matlou, is there is something called Online Oxford English Dictionary. That's the good news. And if you go there and you look it up, you will find a difference. You may even be misled by online dictionaries that say these things are interchangeable and they are synonyms. But they are not. Certainly not in our view. A big law firm is really one that has size, huge. That's big. A large law firm is one that has reach. And that's the difference.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't see any other hands at this point, so I'm going to ask Otsile, you left Wits as a student long time ago, and what did you do after that, before you joined the attorney's profession?
When I was a law student, there was a war for talent by the so-called top firms. They were interviewing everyone on campus and wanting to take the very best. And I missed all of their career days because I was busy fighting with the vice chancellor on behalf of students. So I actually missed all of that. I missed the interviews, I missed everything. And we got to the end of the year and I thought, hell, I haven't applied for articles, I need to do something. And then I thought, no, articles is something that's done by people of inferior quality. I'm going to go to the bar. And so I applied to the Johannesburg Society of Advocates, and I was told, come for an interview. I went there. It was not an interview. We had two freshly baked scones and tea, and I was signed up. So I did pupillage. I finished my pupillage, and then I discovered that I need to have money to set up chambers. And I thought, but come on, guys. Where is a boy from Soweto going to find money to pay someone for rental? I don't have this money. But I had to make a plan. So the group where I did pupillage said to me, well, there's a small chamber that you can occupy whilst you are figuring what to do with yourself. So I thought, okay, fine. So I became an advocate. That didn't last too long. I'm very happy to explain why if you want, but
I do want to know.
So two things happened. The one was that Justice Cameron was still in the Joburg court at the time, and he was also the chairman of the council here at the university. And I should know that he was chairman of the council because when I was on the SRC, I sat on the university council and I gave him a lot of grief, a lot of it. So he invited me as one of two young advocates to sit as assessors in a criminal matter that he was doing. So we sat in that matter, and during that trial, we were listening to evidence. It was lovely. We finished. We retired to his chamber to consider evidence and to formulate a judgment. The then Vice-Chancellor of this university, Professor Colin Bundy, then phoned him. And they were talking about whatever university business, and Colin Bundy said to him, "You know, I'm looking for that young man, Mr. Matlou." And he said, what do you want from him? And he said, "I actually want him to come and work for me." And he said, "You won't believe he's sitting in my chamber." And I said, "Well, tell him to phone me." So Justice Cameron told me. And I said to him, "But that guy is my enemy. He's my sworn enemy. He doesn't like me. I don't like him. So why would he want me?" Anyway, to cut the long story short, I came to the university, spoke to a few people, then I joined the university as an employee. So that's the one reason I left the bar. The other was that while sitting in my very humble chamber looking for work, one of the senior advocates in the group came looking for a junior to help him in a criminal matter. And I agreed to help him. And so I got a bunch of files delivered and I took them home. I still lived with my mom at the time. And over the weekend I was reading myself into these files, and there was a lot of autopsy reports and pictures of dead people. That matter involved representing a serial killer, a very famous one who was subsequently convicted by Judge Geraldine Bochas. And so I was reading myself into these things. At some point I took a break to go to the shops, and my mom went into my room to go and clean it quickly because I'd been reading since the morning. And she saw these dead bodies, pictures of dead bodies in my room, and she phoned me and said, "You come back home." I got back and said, what exactly do you do at work? And I said, "Well, I practice law." No, what do you do? So I didn't answer. I didn't know what she was asking. She then said, "I didn't send you to law school to come and look at pictures of dead people." She then said to me, "Here's what you must do. On Monday, I want you to return all of these files to whoever you got them from. And if you don't do it, I will come personally to do it." And my mom was quite feisty. She would have done it. And so on Monday, I went in and I said, "Listen, you have to take your files back. That woman is going to kill me." And around lunchtime, my mom arrived to say, "Have you now done it? I don't want you to do in this thing. You cannot represent criminals. You cannot look at pictures of dead people. You must find something better to do with your life." So those are the two reasons that made me to leave the bar and to come and work at the university.
I see that there is a question, but before I give you the opportunity to ask the question, I think these are kind of very intense moments that you went through when you decided to leave the bar, apart from all the other issues. But we don't need to go into the other issues that young advocates at this stage are experiencing as well.
So
unless you want to.
No, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
But I do want to say I really wanted to be an advocate. I thought I was going to be a famous silk. But that didn't happen. But I'm glad that my friend who's sitting there, whom I studied with at university, is actually now a silk at the bar. So Tabiso, who's sitting there, is living my dream. He's a silk at the bar because he was stubborn enough to stay at the bar. I left. I guess when I look back on my life, I'm glad I took the decisions that I took. And one of the reasons I say that is I didn't know at the time, but I wasn't going to have my mom for a long time. And I really wanted to buy her a house. And so I came and I worked at the university, and I could afford to buy her a house. And I did buy her a house. She didn't live in it for too many years, and then she passed on. And so I was very happy that at least when my mom passed on, she was living in her own decent house that I had bought. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Otsile, we've got some questions from online. So Nozi has asked two questions. The first one is, can you talk about your transition from being in full-time practice to being a COO? And the second question is, can you share with us what you think some of the qualities of good leadership are?
So Nozi promised me at lunch she will ask the question. I see she's followed through. So I'm not sure that I've made a successful transition from being in full-time practice to becoming a chief operating officer, because I remain in practice. So I'm not so sure that I can say I've made the transition. But I can say it is far better to deal with clients, far, far better to manage the most difficult client relationships than to manage lawyers. They really are an amazing bunch of people. I love my colleagues dearly, but they're a handful. And so the things that I would say is, when you manage lawyers, the first thing you've got to try and do with them is to get them not to lawyer every point when they talk to you, not to litigate with you. Because running a firm involves making difficult choices within very short periods of time. And to consult 220 opinions of clever people before you take any decision is hard. What do I think are some of the qualities of good leadership? I guess the starting point is a famous saying: if service is beneath you, leadership is beyond you. I don't believe you can lead if you don't serve. So my view is that leaders are servants. And so as a starting point, leaders must have an interest in other people and in bettering others away from themselves. And secondly, it must never be done for personal gain. The moment you do it for personal gain, you may be in a leadership role, but you're not leading. Because leadership is fundamentally about service and sacrifice. And so I would say that those who are required to serve, and all of us are required to serve at some point, when we serve, we do so to make an impact, to make things better for those that come after us. And lastly, I would say the greatest reward of leadership is not recognition, it's not personal aggrandizement, but it is the extent to which you impact lives positively. So that's my view about leadership. If I haven't answered Nosy well, I apologize, but I've tried.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any other questions from online? Or in the... Yeah, you do. Okay.
So a question has come through. Let me just see. From Nathaniel. What challenges, if any, did you have when faced with cases that involved student activists? So when you were on the management side at Wits. And then Irvin has asked, what did you make of the announcement from the president last night, in particular the inclusion of the private sector into the current energy mix?
So Nathaniel is an old Wetsie that I studied with, and I also worked with when I was the hall coordinator for West Campus Village. He was a hall coordinator on the East Campus. And so, just for context, when I joined the university in September of the year 2000, many of my friends were still on campus, and I left at the end of '99 as a student activist. And I returned in September of 2000 wearing a suit and a tie. Was my third time. The first two times was on my graduation, when I graduated with my arts degree and when I graduated with my law degree. The third time was when I came to work in the legal office. And after a few months of trying different things, I was told one of the things you must do is student discipline. I lost a few years. I mean, I aged a few years just by being told that. And it was a tough time because my friends were still on campus. Tabiso was finishing his law degree, so he was still on campus. Many of my friends who I was in the leadership of SASCO with were still on campus. And some of them misbehaved. And I was quite tough and stern in disciplining them. And some of them have remained friends of mine to this day. And I specifically remember two that I disciplined. One who held the dean of students hostage. I didn't like that because I thought that even when we were in student leadership, we didn't do that to women. And because he'd done it, I disciplined him. I remain friends with him to this day, and he reminds me every time he sees me that I disciplined him. But I did discipline him. But I also said in the legal office at the time that student discipline is not about getting rid of university students and ending their careers and their dreams. It's about correcting their behavior and making sure that we can save them as law students. And there's a couple of ones that had done some borderline things, and we disciplined them, but we saved their careers. Some of them we saved them here at Wits, some we couldn't. But at least they were able to pursue their university education elsewhere. They were not, I can't remember the language used, but there was a funny certificate of misconduct.
Get a fit and proper letter, or
no, there was
certificate of good conduct?
Yes, there was one that was universally applicable to all students, which if you had from one university, you couldn't register at another university.
Yeah, certificate of good conduct.
Yeah, in my years as in the legal office, we didn't run to that punishment very quickly. I think it was only given to one guy who shot a university professor at the Wits Theatre in the middle of a production. So that was the one. What was the other question?
The introduction of private energy providers to the
What did you make of the President's announcement last night, especially the inclusion of the private sector into the current energy mix?
So 2 weeks ago at the Wits Business School, the Minister of Public Enterprises was requested politely to leave. I don't want to be asked to leave, so please, guys, can we just deal with legal stuff? Please, I ask. My car is parked too far away to delve into these political things. Please, guys. I welcome every suggestion and every decision, the effect of which will resolve our power crisis. My difficulty with our government, and when I say our government, I'm not even speaking in the narrow sense of the current guys in government. I think our democratic government in the last maybe 15, maybe 20, I don't know. My difficulty is there's very little follow-through and implementation on good ideas. When I read the stuff that we produce, when I see the policies we put in place, I ask myself, why are we not 10 paces ahead of where we are? And it all comes down to poor execution. So it's lovely what the President said yesterday. But I don't eat a lot of pudding, but there's an English thing about puddings and the eating. You know that one?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know it well enough to repeat it. We should not be eating pudding tonight. But let's go back to the legal things. You are practicing mining law. What brought you to mining law?
An accident of history. So when I was working at the university, I was determined to be a tax practitioner, so I studied a higher diploma in tax. Studied it for 2 years, finished it, absolutely loved it. Then I thought, no, I now have a tax qualification, I need much more complicated things than being a legal advisor at the university, so I went to do articles. When I was doing articles, the firm where I was working, we rotated every 6 months. And in my second year of articles, it was around early May. I was standing in the lift lobby waiting for a lift to go up. The lift door opened. Out walked Professor Michael Dale, who was the head of the mining practice, who also taught mining law here at Wits. And he said to me, "I've been looking for you." I said, "Okay." I had never spoken to him before. He said, "I've been looking for you." I said, "Okay." He said to me, "Can you come and see me in my office?" I said, "Okay, I'll come." I was a little worried because this man had never said a word to me. And I had nothing to do with his department. I never even walked near his office. So I went. And I sat down and he said to me, "I want you to come and work for me." I looked at him and said, "To do what?" And he said to me, "What do you mean to do what?" I said, "To do what?" He said, "No, I want you to come join my team." I said, "What do you do?" He said, "Mining law." I said, "What is that?" He said, "No, come try it." I said, "I'm not so sure." He said, "Please try it." I said, "Okay." He said, "Can I go and tell HR that you've said yes?" I said, "Yeah." So he went and told them. A couple of weeks later, we were rotating. It was half year. So I was told to go to mining. I went. I didn't know what was going to happen. It was the single most significant moment in my career because I absolutely loved mining. I loved working with him, and I never looked back. So I didn't go into mining because I had a carefully crafted strategy of ending up in mining. Michael Dale asked me to join him. I joined him. It became an unbelievable journey.
Is there a lesson to be learned from your experience?
Absolutely. An opportunity of a lifetime must be taken in the lifetime of the opportunity. I could have said to him, "No, I don't want to do it. Leave me alone. I want to be an M&A lawyer." I could have said, "I've got a tax qualification. What are you talking about, mining?" I could have done that. But I went. So the lesson I want to leave, certainly the students amongst us, is these opportunities don't announce themselves when they come. But when they do come, they can be massive and life-changing. And when they come, you must take them. So that's the lesson for me.
I see also that the fact that you had a qualification in tax doesn't mean that you're going to go into that direction, even if you think it because these other opportunities came along. So this is a very important lesson, I think, for all of us, to grab the moment.
You have to grab the moment. But also, at that time, I didn't realize it was black people didn't know how to do tax at the time. There was a common knowledge. "Oh no, blacks can't do tax. Forget it. Go and try employment. Tax is a little bit more nuanced." The reality is there's a lot of tax practitioners, very, very leading tax practitioners who are black. But I studied tax because I loved it. I had romantic notions about ending up in tax. The truth is, where you end up and what you specialize in, if you are in practice, is not always, in fact, in the majority of cases, it's not up to you. It's up to a combination of the people you end up working with and the clients, whether you are at the bar or whether you are at the sidebar. Because if you're at the bar, you can say, "I want to be a corporate lawyer," and you can only ever get divorce instructions. I want to see you saying, "I don't want to do them," and starving because you're waiting for a corporate matter. It's not going to happen. You're going to take those divorce matters and you're going to do them, and you may end up being very good at it and end up being a leading divorce lawyer. So practice throws what it throws at us, and we must grab the opportunities.
What do you think, are there certain things that we need to think about regarding the extractives industry in South Africa and the role in building our economy?
Yes. So let me first say the mining clients pay my fees. So I've been working with mining clients for many years. They pay my fees. We work very nicely together. I don't want to see someone on Twitter saying, "Oh, that man says mining clients are shocking." Please, guys, let's not do that.
Well, we can skip the question also.
No, I'm very happy to answer it. I happen to have grown up in Soweto. And growing up in Soweto, I used to play on what I regarded as a hill. And I discovered only when I was working with Michael Dale that this thing has a technical name called a tailing stem. And it was basically a heap of gold that had been piled over many, many years. And that's why I used to play. And then I discovered that some of these tailings are uraniferous, which means they contain uranium in them. And I was a little upset when I discovered that where I used to play is potentially dangerous. So I think we can do extractives better. We can keep tailings away from the public, certainly from children. They shouldn't be running up and down on tailings and do what I used to do. How we didn't contract silicosis is a thing of wonder. As we used to inhale that dust all the time. So I think we can, as an industry, keep the extractives stuff away from the public and from harm. Secondly, in this country, we talk about transformation of everything, transformation, including of the extractive space. And when I speak to mining houses, I often say to them, you know, during the height of our apartheid, there was no legislation that said you must build hostels for black employees. It was not in legislation, but they did it. There was no legislation that said you must pay black people poorly, but they did. And so part of the new way of doing extractives, I think, is for mining houses to play their part in correcting the wrongs of the past. And some of the major mining houses are doing relatively well in doing that. I'm not so sure that all of them can hold their head high and say they're doing everything they can. But I think that mining is such an important part of our economy. This room we're sitting in, I'm looking at it, I see so many products of mining. I'm holding one of them in my hand. That camera is full of so many mining things. All of us this morning, at least this morning, I hope some of us have done it more than once, we brushed our teeth. The toothpaste you use as minerals. So mining is really important to the economy. But I think we can mine responsibly. And there are many good examples in South Africa of responsible mining. There are also horrific examples.
I'm going to ask the audience whether there are any questions at this point from them, leading from some of the questions or something just that you would like to ask. There's someone at the back.
I want to ask in terms, because you spoke a lot about mining, and I want to know your view on the issue of land redistribution, considering the fact that South Africa has so much contribution in the mining sector. And do you think that in terms of the land redistribution, considering the inequalities that exist in the country, would you think that would benefit those inequalities in the country? Like putting that balance that is missing.
So when I was doing jurisprudence in this university, our lecturer was an American guy. I don't know how we ended up with an American guy on jurisprudence in South Africa, but we ended up with an American guy who absolutely loved John Rawls. And so we were asked to do assignments, and I picked an assignment using a theory of justice that Rawls wrote, and I applied it to the 1913 Land Act, and I thought, let's see how one can test this. And I produced what I thought was a respectable piece of scholarship. I submitted it. I got 50%. I did not take it lying. I did not even bother speaking to the lecturer. I went straight to the dean. Back then, the School of Law had it was a faculty on its own. This is before the rationalization. So the dean was the late Andrew Skin, and I went to him and I said, look at this thing. How can this American guy give me 50% after this brilliant piece of scholarship? And he said, no, leave it with me, I'll read it. He read it, and he said, well, I actually don't agree with you. And I agree with him. I said, university is not about agreement, it's about scholarship. You must not test whether you agree or not. Test whether this is a scholastic piece. He said, well, I've also tested that, and I thought it was rather mediocre. It was the last time the dean ever used the word mediocre with me. A few things happened. It's one of the few things when I say there's some things we did as student leaders that I'm not so proud of. One of them was that. But the point is that land redistribution in South Africa is an important topic. And I don't want to get into political trouble, and I see you're desperately dragging me there, but it's okay. My view is the way South Africa has chosen to deal with it, the architecture of land redistribution in South Africa, I don't think is right. I'm very happy to share with you my thoughts on that, but for that I charge per hour. There are some opinions that are out there that we've issued on this topic, so it would be unfair that others have paid for that view and you are getting it for free. But you can get this from me for free, is that I think we could have done the architecture of a new South Africa, especially as it regards land. I think we could have done it better. I did not agree with the first limitation of a date by which people to submit claims. Did not understand what drove it. It didn't make sense to me. It still doesn't conceptually make sense to me. I don't understand the politicization of redistribution of land. I don't understand why in the last couple of years people have gone back to that topic as a populist call to try and, I suppose, confuse the electorate. I think it's a fairly important topic, which has to do with the people of South Africa, all of us, black and white. And it's an important topic that requires sober minds, but I don't think we've dealt with it properly. I've made my views known. Ntsiki will tell you that she and I were summoned by government to go and share our thoughts on some transformation topics, and I shared my thoughts, almost got into trouble. So I'm very happy to advance that discussion with you afterwards if you don't mind.
There's another question down here. Is there one up there as well? Okay, so I'm going to give you a chance, and then the lady down here.
Good evening. Ndade Otsile. I'm saying that name very deliberately.
You are in my good books.
That's what were my intentions. I'm happy that, firstly, you mentioned the word stress alongside the head of law school. I hope she was listening. My question basically is, and I hope it's not about politics, but I'll try to phrase it very legally. Does South Africa own the mines? And if we do, or if we do not, what's the law around that, since like you practice around mining? Because we tend to hear these stories that although they are in our land, but still we don't own the mines. Okay. And then secondly, my question would be, especially for those who want to do maybe in-house and would you advise someone to do masters or to further their studies before they go to practice, like doing articles and? Thank you.
No, thank you. Let's start with the second one because we can dispense with it quickly. My view is that if you want to get the best out of a master's degree, it's better to do it when you've seen practice a little bit and when you can study in a field of your choice, so that you can get the benefit of it. If you do it straight after your law degree, and if you've done a straight LLB, that's fine. People who do a straight LLB, I encourage them to immediately do a master's. And the reason for that is we want you to be on campus for 1 more year, to grow a little bit. It's quite challenging to have a 21-year-old in a meeting when we're advising clients on important questions. But it's better to have a 22-year-old. So we encourage that. But if you want the value out of a master's degree, my view is practice for a few years, know what you want, and then you can do a very nice master's in something that will be of benefit to you. On the first question, do we own the mines as South Africa? What is the law around mines? Firstly, let's talk about what a mine is. A mine is nothing more than a factory. It's really just a factory. Like if you have a clothing factory or if you have a plant where you build cars, a mine is just a factory. And so it is owned by the people who construct it and build it and who finance it. So it's not owned by the state at all. Then let's talk about the minerals themselves. Now, in the world, there are two, broadly speaking, there are two systems that are operated. Countries that recognize private ownership of minerals and countries that don't. So if you go to the US, you will see that in all of the mining states, because not every state in America has minerals, in all of them, in the mining states, they have private ownership of minerals. So individuals can own minerals. And then you look at some countries on our continent and in South America and elsewhere where there's a public ownership of minerals. So those are the two systems. They're either owned by the state or they're owned by individuals and corporates. Those are the two broad systems. South Africa wouldn't be South Africa if it fell in one or the other. We don't fall in one or the other. So in South Africa, we're somewhere in between because our law says mineral resources are a common heritage of the people of South Africa. And they belong to the nation. That's what the law says in its preamble. Now, if you are a law student that knows anything about the law of property, you will know that common heritage of the people of South Africa does not confer ownership. You would also know that belonging to the nation doesn't confer ownership, and that the nation is also not a legal entity capable of taking ownership. But that's what our law says. But it was designed like that very deliberately. So in South Africa, the question that arises is, who owns minerals in the ground? When they're in the ground, who owns them? The state, not a chance. Because our law says the state is the custodian. So our state is a custodian of mineral resources on behalf of the people. So the state does not own them. So who owns them? The people. They belong to the people, certainly, but the people don't own it. They just belong to them. It gets you back as a good legal theorist to a simple question. Who can bring a vindicatory action when the Zamazamas have gone onto a farm to steal minerals? Who can bring an action, re vindicatio, to get them back? The landowner. Why? Because in my view, when minerals are in situ, in the ground. They belong to the landowner. But that right of ownership that the landowner has been stripped of most of its content by statute, and they remain with a bare dominium. So although they have that theoretical right of ownership, they can't commercialize it. And the law says if you're a mining company and you apply for a mining right and you get it, and then you go and mine relying on that title, as soon as you sever the minerals from the ground, you own them. The moment they are released from the ground, they are no longer in their natural state, they are movable. You who mines them owns them. That's what our law says. And why the law says belonging to the people and all of this nebulous language is because our Mining Act came after the Constitution. And Parliament wanted to bypass the Section 25 problems, the right to property. And there's a judgment that the Constitutional Court has now, Agri-SA, that the Constitutional Court has now laid down what the law is, and they've done exactly that. So those parliamentarians at least did something clever for once. Thank you.
Okay, the lady here in front.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And Dr. Matlou, I have 2 questions for you. But firstly, I want to say thank you for this session. Being a COO, I'm sure you're very busy. The first one relates to junior miners. Do you think the country has done enough to realize the plight of junior miners as far as funding and investment is concerned? And my second question is, in light of the recent legal sector code, how have you found it to navigate spaces which previously excluded black people and became successful in that space? Thank you.
Okay. I'm gonna need you to clarify the second question when we get to it, but let's deal first with the junior miners. So in every established mining sector in a particular country, you can segment the industry into 3 players, broadly speaking. You've got the majors, or the senior mining players. Then you've got junior miners, and then you have artisanal and small-scale miners. These last 2 sometimes are confused and used interchangeably. But in South Africa, the industry is geared in favor of the seniors, because it's a mature mining industry. So our law, when you read it, it was drafted for the big mining houses. Everything about our regulatory framework is set up for the senior guys, and it works perfectly for them. In my view, we have done very little for the junior sector. We certainly have done absolutely nothing for the artisanal miners and the small-scale miners. Those, you can't even talk about them. In South Africa, there's only one section in the Act that has 107 sections. There's only one section, Section 27, that talks about those small-scale guys. The rest of the law is really meant for the senior guys. And even the industry bodies that are successful are all because their membership is of senior mining houses. The industry bodies that represent small-scale miners and junior miners are relatively weak and underdeveloped, because we simply haven't done enough about that. And that's part of our problem. And that's why people talk about our industry as a sunset industry, because they're looking at these big miners who have run operations for many years and are tapering off, because they are looking at opportunities elsewhere, and people think that South Africa as a mining destination is on the way down. But if you look at the geology of the country, it tells you that there's significant deposits that are yet to be mined, which means South Africa should be a sunrise mining industry. But because of an underdeveloped junior sector, we have a problem.
Sorry, you wanted me to elaborate on the second question?
Yeah, just clarify, just to make sure that I understand.
Yes. So, in light of this code, you would think that in 2022 we wouldn't have the issues that the code is trying to address, basically the inequalities between black and white in the legal sector. During your time, I can imagine there wasn't such a piece of legislation, or you would have thought that that code would have come just after we got our democracy. But it's 2022, and we have this draft code that will come into place hopefully soon. So I just wanted to understand that as a young black person, when you came into the space, how did you navigate it? How did you find it and manage to be successful?
So the first thing I want to say, and forgive me for being personal for 2 seconds, I was telling Engela earlier that other than my mom, the one person who has had significant impact in my life is Michael Dale. He happens to be a white male. I cannot tell you what that man did for me. He took me under his wing as an article clerk. He took a liking to me, and he showed me things that many have never seen and will not see, and took his time to really get the best out of me. And the mining lawyer I became, and everything I've ever done in my career owes a heck of a lot to him. So that's the starting point at a personal level. And it's important to make this point because whether you're a black lawyer or you're a white lawyer, when you come into the profession, you know nothing about it. And you need those who are ahead of you to train you and to show you the ropes. And so, to my mind, sector codes and legislation and these instruments that are transformative are important. We need them. And the reason we need them is because, unfortunately, we have some members of our society who will not do it without being coerced. But fundamental social change doesn't happen because of legislation. It happens because of a change in attitudes. It happens because we see one another as human beings. It happens because we understand that investment in the younger people, whether they're white or black, whether they're male or female, investment in young people is investment in the future of our country. The fact of the matter in this country is you have many more black people than you have white people. And therefore it stands to reason that the success of the country requires black people to be successful. It's not something that's a regulatory issue. And so, yes, the legal profession, the law that we use to govern the profession, the LPA, came late in the day. Yes, the transformation instruments that are being bandied about are late in the day. But to my mind, where we need to hold one another accountable is not there. It's not the pace with which we've put those into place, but the extent to which we have changed people's lives. And I see daily in our firm, and I see in other firms, I see at the bar, lives being changed. Do I think we've done enough? I don't think so. I actually think we are significantly behind. But I'm happy that despite a code, we've achieved some of the victories that we have. I mean, the firm that I work at, and I'm very proud to work at ENS, that firm has got a majority of our partners to this day are white and male, the majority of our partners. To this day. But in our firm, we have taken such bold steps, and we continue to take them, and we're not perfect. Our management team does not have a single white male. Our chief executive is a black guy, and it is because of him that I walk around as a COO. All I ever wanted to do with my life was to practice law. This thing of managing lawyers, he imposed it on me. So we've got women in significant positions of leadership at our firm. And so I think that, yes, these regulatory instruments are important, and maybe when we did the Equality Act, the Employment Equity Act, when we did the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, like in the early days of transformation, maybe that's when we should have done all of them. But the fact of the matter is we did not. But transformation is not something that requires us to wait until there's a piece of legislation. There's a lot in the code or the proposed code that I don't like. There's a significant amount of things that are in there that I regard as conceptual vicissitudes, because I don't think there's clarity of thought around what we need to achieve. But I understand the broad thinking is correct. But I'm not happy with some of the stuff. Thank you.
I see that we have questions from online.
Thanks. So perhaps the last two questions from online. There's a question here from Nkobile. What is your take on the level of unemployment, particularly among black LLB graduates? And then the last question is a question around cyber law in South Africa, and just your feeling around, are we dealing with it properly? And can you maybe talk a little bit about what ENSAfrica is doing to ensure its effectiveness in the cyber law area?
So firstly, I'm not a statistician, so forgive me for not knowing the numbers of unemployed law graduates and all of that. I am aware that the law firms, certainly the big firms, which is the space that I occupy, were inundated with applications for articles. And in a good year, we will take 50, maybe in our firm, spread throughout our different offices in South Africa. Wits probably has, 600 law students. I don't know what the numbers are, but if you have 15 law schools and they each produce, call it 300 law graduates, and we take 50, it's a drop in an ocean. And there are other big firms that take different numbers. I suspect we take the most, but so there are a lot of people who are going to struggle to get articles in the big firms, and then below that there's a whole host of firms that absorb significant chunks. But after all of the firms have absorbed law graduates, after every single position of a candidate attorney has been filled, or candidate legal practitioner, I need to speak today's language. After all of those have been filled, and after the different societies of advocates have taken pupils, and all of the spots have been taken, there is significant amounts of law graduates who are not placed after all of that. Some end up in graduate programs at banks, but they take a few. Some end up in all sorts of in-house roles and stuff. But it is worrying that there are significant numbers of young people who go to university and who then don't have an opportunity for placement. So there's a problem that I think as a society and as an economy we need to address. But I also have a message for young lawyers, law students in particular. This thing of passing your LLB with 55 doesn't work, guys. I'm sorry, it doesn't work. The quality of your law degree, if you are here at Wits and you get your LLB with 55, we're not going to invite you for an interview. We just won't. Not that we want nerds that have 95% in everything. We actually want well-rounded candidates. But you do have to show evidence of academic ability in order to practice law. So can you guys spend a little bit more time studying? Just notch up your marks a little bit, please. At least make sure that the vets graduate. Don't end up in these statistics of LLB students that don't have placement. But it is a problem. I think we have a problem. I also think that there are too many law graduates that this country is producing per year. I think there's just way too many. I think we, in the city of Johannesburg, we are running short of engineers who can sort out the municipal systems, the sewage system that's collapsing on us, the road infrastructure, but we are producing lawyers. I think we can dial down on the lawyers, not extinguish them, but dial down, and I think we can focus elsewhere. Cyber law. So firstly, we've got some clever lawyers at our firm who know everything about cyber law, who practice in the space. I happen to not be one of them. But what I know about this space is the following. Maybe it's true for all legal development. The law is slow to catch up. There are very few areas where you've got a perfect legal regime before you need it. In most things, people do all sorts of stuff. And when they do it, Parliament thinks, hell, we better regulate this. We don't like it. And so the law is always slow. So cyber law, in my view, came a little bit too late to the party. But I don't blame the evolution of the regulatory framework, because things have happened in technology in particular so quickly that none of us can be prepared for what's coming. So as we moved everything away from physical engagement to online engagement, including financial transactions and those sort of things, all that's happened is our friends who are in alternative employment, the criminals, they've also moved online. And the stuff that they do is always ahead of regulation. So the law catches up after a while. The way we engage, when I was a university student, when we had problems with one another, especially boys, we used to go to men's res and have a fist fight to resolve things. Today people don't bother doing that because you have cyberbullying. You can have a barrage of things on you happening online that can destroy people and can lead to suicide and all sorts of social ills. And the law is late to react. You can have a US president who literally starts an insurrection online, no problem, and then pretend as if he doesn't know. And Mark Zuckerberg and his friends will have a meeting and say, okay, maybe we must put him offline for a few weeks and all of that. So the reality is our behavior will always precede the regulation. So that's an important thing. Having said all of that, I think we've seen huge leaps and bounds in the regulation of the cyberspace. There's some significant regulatory frameworks across the world. In South Africa, we are okay, but we're not as good, for example, as Kenya. The Kenyans have moved ahead of us. And one of the things that, particularly in the financial aspects of cyber, is that countries with poor infrastructure have an advantage over countries with established infrastructure. Because the guys with poor infrastructure don't have to go through the 10 steps that you've gone through with your infrastructure. They can leapfrog to the front and do stuff that's current today, stuff that's working today. So 10 years ago in Kenya, to move money around was a problem. Today they do 1.3 billion transactions a month using their phones. And they send money all over the world. So it's easy stuff, okay? So whereas we who still have ATM machines and branches of banks and all of these things, you've got to deal with this stuff. protection of information has become an issue, and it started as a combat of some cyber issues that were happening. It's now a standalone discipline. Processing of personal information has become a big issue because all of us now no longer have actual friends. We have virtual friends, millions of them across the world, and we share everything with them. I was taking some pictures with trepidation earlier because I'm pretty sure that I now have a few hundred online friends because of it. And so those things, as they happen and as people become more open and share more, they open us up to online profilers who do stuff, and they can harm you. And so the law needs to come in and try and protect all of us. But it's always late. I mean, our personal protection of personal information legislation is 2 years old. Like 2 years old. How old is Facebook? I don't know. But it's very old now. But our law is 2 years old, so very slow.
Do you think the universities are doing enough in teaching cyber law and cyber law related things? What do you think should we be doing? To what extent?
I think universities should be teaching technology. Law schools should be teaching every law student. When I was doing law, there was a thing called compulsory courses and elective courses. And things like tax that I really loved was an elective. Back then I said, and Tsapang, my friend who's sitting at the back there, I did tax with him. We used to talk about it, and we used to say, it's actually criminal for someone to qualify as a lawyer in this country and not know tax. It is at the heart of just about everything we do. So why is it not compulsory? Today, my view is technology needs to be at the heart of what we teach at law schools. Both the regulatory stuff in tech, but tech itself. And cyber law becomes, therefore, a subset of that. I don't think students should choose to do it. I think they must all go through it. When we did intro to SA law, in our first year, before you were led wandering around with the law of persons and other things, you did intro to SA law. I think technology and cyber law should be treated in the same way today, simply because of where we find ourselves. Most sophisticated law firms have document automation systems. The lawyers no longer have to sit and craft a clever force majeure clause. They do an interview question on an online thing. Few click-throughs, you click, 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 to boom, sale of shares agreement with a perfect force majeure clause. That's what the world has gone to. So lawyers need to learn different types of skills. They still need to learn the old good skills too, because those help the mind to be sharp. But I think technology should be taught at law school.
And if you are given the opportunity now to give some tips to the law students of today, what do you think are the most important things that one should focus on to become as successful as you have become?
The first thing is that technical skills are not enough. At law school, we are taught the law in all of its manifestations. When we join law firms or when we go to the bar, what do we do there? The law. We do it for a few years. And suddenly, you are expected to have a huge following, a huge clientele. You are supposed to know how to manage and run a practice, and effectively you're supposed to have business skills. But no one has ever taught you. So my first counsel to law students is develop those other skills early on. And what are those other skills? The first one is interpersonal skills. The most important skill you can develop, far more important than your legal knowledge, is an ability to connect with people. If you do not develop that ability, I don't care how clever you are, and I don't care what legal knowledge you have. If you don't develop an ability to connect with people, your legal skills can never propel you to the top of the profession. Every single of the leading lawyers in the profession across generations share one trait and one trait only. They connect well with people. So that's the first one. The second one, certainly today, you have to be tech savvy. It's important to be tech savvy. When I was a young partner working with Michael Dale, him and I went to Copenhagen, to the University of Copenhagen, and there was something happening there. When we were there, we were briefed by one of the diamond producers on an extremely important question of law, and we needed to give them advice on an urgent basis. And Michael Dale had taken his analog dictaphone with a small cassette. You talk into it. When you finish, you take the cassette out, you hand it to the secretary. She puts it into a machine, presses play, listens, and types whatever you've said. That's how he operated. Except the secretary was in Joburg and we were in Copenhagen, and the opinion was urgent. But I had taken my laptop and I had also taken my digital dictaphone. So I said to him, don't worry, let's do this thing. So we did it. We did a bit of research quickly. He did the outline of the opinion, said to me, here's what I think we need to do, go and do it. So I sat with my dictaphone and I dictated the opinion. Put it on my docking station, it sent an email to the secretary. She typed it, mailed it back to me, went to the business center, printed a copy for him, because he needed a physical copy, and I read it online and did my edits. And when we were flying back, he said to me, this small experience has taught me that despite my legal skills, I'm actually under threat of irrelevance. If I was here alone, I would never have been able to deliver this piece of work. And this client would have had to go to another law firm in Johannesburg because they needed an answer in 2 days. And we were there for 4 days. And so the point I want to make about technology, and even what I've just described, in my books, it's such old technology. This is like mid-2000s. It's such old technology. Today we don't do that. I don't have a digital dictaphone, guys. I don't use it anymore. There are slightly better ways of doing the same thing. So technology is the second one. The third thing, you still have a chance to go to another school within the university. You really have a chance. But if you stay in law, please develop thick skin. Please, guys. If you don't want to develop thick skin, you can go elsewhere. You are going to need thick skin. Why? Because you are going to have your counterparts in a matter who are only interested in showing both your client and their client how poor you are. So you will be subjected to abuse by counterparts. Number two, your clients are going to put you under tremendous pressure. Because what they are going to do is the following. They know there's an audit committee meeting coming up of the board. They don't brief you, but they've been asked in the audit committee to obtain an opinion on an important governance question. They don't brief you on time. And then when the audit committee meeting is the following day, they brief you. You now do an opinion on the following questions. Can we have it at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning? If you are a work-life balance person who wants to meditate and drink green tea, it's not going to work. So please, guys. And the last one, there are 3 things that you must remember if you forget everything else that I've said. A good lawyer must have 3 things, and they all start with A. Ability, availability, affability. Those are the three things. Your clients must enjoy working with you. They must like you. We're not dentists. They must enjoy the experience.
Thank you so much. I think I'm going to stop our discussion at this very positive time with the wonderful advice I think that Otsile has given us. And I think some of us that has been in the game for quite some time has also learned something from him tonight. Otsile, thank you so much for being here tonight, for sharing your journey with us, for sharing your thoughts, your wisdom. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to invite all of you now outside. We have some refreshments where you can perhaps take another picture with him. Just don't use technology too badly. And to have a chat, getting to know one another. And I hope to see you at some of the future events that we will have here at the school. Thank you so much for your attention.